Hello, and welcome to the pilot episode of This Week with the Periodic Calendar. I'm your host, Joey Sellers, and I'd like to start this show with a confession. Dear world, I'm sorry, but I think I might have broke your calendar. I didn't mean to, but the more I work with the periodic calendar, the more obvious it becomes that this just isn't cutting it anymore. Now in this series, we're going to take a step back from the usual this day in history business and instead start looking at history a whole week at a time. Now expanding our scope not only is going to provide extra context and perspective for understanding historical events, it's also going to expose our old friend here as a rudimentary tool that is at best sloppy and at worst inaccurate. And it's going to provide the perfect example for why the periodic calendar truly represents a new way to look at time. What does all that mean? Well, let's jump in. Here we have the elements for the first week of April in 2013, running Monday through Sunday. And we're going to start with a harmless enough example and talk about the founding of Apple Computer. Now, Apple Computer was founded on Thursday, April 1st, 1976. And that might seem like a simple enough fact, but this year in 2013, April 1st falls on a Monday. And so anybody not using a periodic calendar is going to tell you that Apple was founded on this day, Monday. The problem is, next year, April 1st is going to fall on Tuesday. So it's 2014, and anyone still not using the periodic calendar is going to tell you that Apple was founded on this day. Of course, given enough time, the old calendar is going to tell us that Apple was founded on every day of the week and not give us any clue for where it actually resides. But with the periodic calendar, Apple's anniversary falls on this day and stays on this day no matter what year it is. And that's really the big news here. With our old calendar, days are flying all over the place, but with the periodic calendar, for the first time ever, we're going to have a consistent way to regard past events. Now stick with me here because I'm about to lay out history as never seen before. So, what happened this week in history? Well, the big news on Monday occurs back in 1917, when President Woodrow Wilson starts off the week by going to Congress and asking them to declare war on Germany. Now this proposal weighs on Americans' minds for 4 days until Friday of this week, when Congress follows through and the United States enters World War I. Back on Tuesday, we got two communications systems getting their start. The first, in 1860, the Pony Express has its first run leave St. Joe, Missouri, and on that same day, in 1973, the first mobile phone call was made. Moving on to Wednesday, we run into a little cluster of events from the early days of the American government, starting in 1789, with the House of Representatives achieving its first quorum in New York City. On this day, they also elect the first House Speaker. Then 3 days later, on Monday, the U.S. Mint is established, and in that same week in 1792, George Washington issues the first veto on Thursday, and it's about a bill regarding how seats in the House of Representatives are given out to the states. Meanwhile, Thursday, 1850, Los Angeles, California is incorporated. And the day before that, in 1902, the Electric Theater opens in LA, and that's the first full-time movie theater. Now, 102 years early in a different theater, but on the same Wednesday, Beethoven performs his first symphony in Vienna. Unfortunately, Thursday does not come out clean, also carrying the weight of the Rosenbergs getting sentenced to death for espionage in 1951, and then in 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated in my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee. Continuing on with some strange brew, we've also got Titanic beginning at sea trials in 1912 on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, the World Trade Center was dedicated a day after the first mobile call in 1973. Let's also not forget 1941, an Iraqi military coup on Tuesday. But at very least, we get the conceptual cherry on top with CBS's premiere of As the World Turns on Monday in 1956. Now, to close out our work week here, we already talked about the fact that on Thursday in 1976, Apple was founded. But what we didn't get around to is the fact that on Friday in 1975, Microsoft was founded. So apparently, this is a good week to start a computer company. What's the weekend forecast? Well, as usual, we got a wedding to go to, and that's going to be on Saturday for Pocahontas back in 1614. And also on this day, we got the U.S. adopting the Stars and Stripes back as its flag in 1818. And then President Truman, working on a Saturday, signs the Marshall Plan back in 1948. And that's to help Europe recover economically from World War II. Starting off our busy Sunday, we've got Easter Island discovered back in 1722. Then, in 1841, President William Henry Harrison dies of pneumonia only 32 days into his first term. And he's the first president to die in office. He also has served the shortest term of any president to date. Okay, next up, 21 years and 7 presidents later, it's 1862. The Civil War is going on, Lincoln's in office, and the Battle of Shiloh begins in Tennessee on this day. 3 years later, the Confederates are fleeing the capital in Richmond just days before the end of the Civil War. And finally, we end with another pair starting in 1930 when Gandhi calls a strike after a 24-day march to the sea in protest of British salt laws. And then finally, in 2008, a general strike begins in Egypt on the very same Sunday. And here we have This Week in History. Now, despite the fact that everything I just told you is true, if you hear about any of these anniversaries elsewhere this week, you're probably going to be told that they happened on a different day. And in fact, of all the events that we've talked about here, only these 3 in orange are going to match up with our regular calendar. As a broken clock is right 2 times a day, our old calendar does get it right every few years or so. But next year, these events, just like all the rest, get shifted over a day, and these won't actually line up correctly again until the year 2019. But with the periodic calendar, this is it. This arrangement does not change. By anchoring ourselves to the days of the week, we achieve a consistent view of history. So, who's right? What does it all mean? Does it really matter? Well, that's what we're going to be discussing in this series. Now, if this is your first time seeing the periodic calendar, you might have more questions than answers at this point, and I invite you to check out periodiccalendar.com to learn more, and that's where you're always going to find the latest news and research into this new calendar system. Of course, the best way to get to know it is to get your very own periodic calendar. Stock standard with over 8 centuries, this is the last calendar you'll ever need, and perhaps the best value of the 21st century. Not only is it a fun and colorful addition to your wall, it's also the key to exploring past, present, and future dates as never before. Okay, that's enough out of me. I hope you join me next Monday, because I've already mapped out next week, and I can promise you it's no sophomore slump. Until then, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching.